I had a visit from the Hat Man about 19 years ago when I was 14, and it was the most terrifying thing of my life. I woke up one early morning and was extremely thirsty, so I walked out of my bedroom, down the stairs, through the living room, in the then dining recreation room, into the kitchen, and got a glass of water. I checked the time on the microwave, it was around 3 a.m., and thought to myself that I'd just stay up and watch some TV before everyone else got up. I lived in a household of 9, so it was a luxury to get peaceful time alone. I walked into the living room, sat my cup on the table, then sat on the edge of our love seat to slide back and have my feet dangle off the side while I laid to watch TV. When I sat on the edge, I was facing the doorway into the living room and had seen a tall figure around 6'4", pitch black, shadow of a man that had a wide-brimmed hat and a trench coat. I remember thinking he looked like a pitch-black version of Van Helsing, standing in the doorway. I immediately thought to myself, holy shit, a serial killer just broke in, and got a terrifying, dreadful, creeped-out feeling, and remember thinking that I had to get the hell out of there. The front door was to my right, but I figured he must have climbed through the living room window, which was close to the front door, so I decided I would go to my left, through the kitchen, laundry room, to the back door, and scream to wake everyone up. As I decided to run, I realized my body wasn't working, and it felt like there was a slight pin-pricking pressure all around me. This terrified me way more as I felt I had zero control and felt this thing had extremely bad intentions from just the way he stood there facing me. He then started moving towards me, which caused me to go into a huge internal panic, and when he was about 5 feet away from me, I felt like I slid back on the couch. I was paralyzed looking at the ceiling. It actually relieved some of the anxiety until I felt his pant legs touch my shins. I realized that my feet were still planted on the ground, and I was essentially hovering over the seat cushions of the love seat. I couldn't move my eyes, but I saw him in my bottom peripheral vision, and he started leaning over me until darkness from his face completely covered my vision. At that point, all emotions were gone, no fear nor anything, and I remember being conscious for what felt like literally hours but had zero thoughts. It's like if you close your eyes and do not think about anything for a second, but for hours. I was just conscious and staring into a vast darkness. I remember after the fact that it was weird that I didn't feel his hat nor face touch me. It was almost like there was a vast empty space when his face moved into mine, but I did feel his shins. I then woke up in my bed and was absolutely shocked that I was still alive. I was in a panic mode and highly confused, so I tried looking up on Google and Wikipedia, 2004 versions, and only came across the concept of a night terror. I wrote it off as that for many years, and then later as sleep paralysis once I found out what that was. I didn't put much thought into it until a couple years ago, when I stumbled across a picture of the Hat Man and a post asking about him. It gave me the absolute heebie-jeebies when I realized what I had experienced was a somewhat common thing. It's weird how connected I feel to people's stories when they mention how terrifying it was, since I know exactly how they felt in their experiences. It made me really start questioning if what I had experienced wasn't a bad dream, since I was extremely convinced I was awake. I've had a total of 5 sleep paralysis experiences. The Hat Man felt more real than the other ones. A weird alien, shadow on my chest choking me, something covering my eyes, nose, and mouth, suffocating me, a bizarre smiling man, and the creepy Hat Man. I had a very vivid dream experience with the Hat Man. What makes mine different is, he actually got me in the dream. It started with me and my husband arriving in a Wild West vibe Airbnb. It was one out of 3 other small houses alike, with haystacks scattered around the area and all located within a badly fenced piece of dirt land. Everything around us was desert. We were greeted by an old lady, dressed very old-fashioned, A-line midskirt with an apron and a plain worn-out white shirt. The house itself looked old and eerie. But in the dream, I was like, well, we signed up for this, I guess. The house has a large living room connected with kitchen and dining, very, very tall ceilings, and terrible lighting. There was a hallway leading to the main bedroom, and on the left side of the hallway, there was a doorway, with no door, to the laundry area. This space is important. I noticed the laundry room was quite small, had a set of stacked washer and dryer, and an empty corner right next to it. Just enough to fit one person. I walked back and forth down the hallway to set stuff up in the bedroom, but I keep noticing a brim of a hat peeking out a little bit out of the corner behind the washer and dryer. I ignored it for the longest time until nighttime comes. I don't know why I felt the urge to stop my track that one time. I was on my way towards the main bedroom, and I turned towards the shadow to take a good look at it. The more I looked, the more it reveals itself and moves out of that empty corner. Until eventually I could see a very clear, tall, dark male figure with a trench coat, some sort of cowboy hat, and no facial features. It moved as if it was floating, with its hands in his pocket, and floated towards me very slowly. I was frozen. I tried screaming, running backwards, but I fell on my bum. I felt weak, and he was closing in on me. My husband did not do anything but scream for my life as he watched. Soon enough, he got as close as an inch away from me. I braced myself for impact and closed my eyes. My heart was pounding so much I thought I was going to die. But then I woke up in my real-life room, gasping for air, still laying down face up. I felt my husband's breath since he has always been a side sleeper and always facing me, so I spoke to my husband. I had the scariest dream, as I turned to my head to the left side where my husband was sleeping, only to find the Hat Man looking at me from behind my husband's back. He was cradling my husband as he looks at me with his smooth as egg face. I tried screaming and woke up gasping for air again. This time I was truly awake. I even pinched myself and checked around to see if I was actually awake, and I was. My husband was there next to me. Suddenly our bedroom door began to slowly open. I was starting to get scared, only to realize it was just our cat making his way into our room. It was approaching dawn so I could see some light, but I could still feel the terror I felt throughout that entire dream, and I still get goosebumps whenever I think about it to this day. This is an absolutely true story from when I was very young, and one of the few brushes with the paranormal I've ever had. I must have been no older than 3 or 4, because this occurred at a house my family and I moved out of shortly after I was that age. I only have this, and a select few other memories of living there. I was lying in my bed, which was lengthwise on the same wall as the door into the room, which was right at the foot of my bed. The hall light was on, so there was a bit of that light shining through the door. I wasn't fully asleep yet when I heard a noise and opened my eyes to see what was going on. There, standing in the hallway light from the door, was a black figure that appeared to be a man with what looked like a fedora-type hat on. I could clearly see arms and legs, which, aside from the hat, is why I assumed it was male. The figure was darker than dark, a full matte shadow. He had no facial features, save for 2 holes in his face where eyes are supposed to be. The weird thing about the eyes was that they were just holes in his head, and the light from the hallway shone through them. He was standing right at the foot of my bed, facing toward me. I was raised on scary movies, and remember thinking it was Freddy Krueger in my room. It just lay there, and I stared at it, completely shocked and terrified. What scared me more than seeing him was the awful feeling the presence invoked. It was more than fear. It felt like everything good had left the room, leaving only him and me. When I finally did move, it was to throw the covers up over my head. I closed my eyes and prayed that whatever it was would go away. My heart was beating like crazy. I feared he was going to hurt or kill me. When I removed the blanket and timidly opened one eye to see if the figure was still there, I was relieved to see that he had gone away. The only person I told about it was my mom years later, and she told me my father had probably wandered into my room drunk or something. So I blew it off and lived the rest of my life believing that I must have been dreaming, and didn't tell anyone else what happened. Then one day I was at a paranormal panel at an anime convention, and someone brought up what they called shadow people. If you don't already know about shadow people, they're speculated to be interdimensional beings, bad omens, guardian angels, demons, etc. It all depends on who you talk to. I didn't know anything about them at the time, and thought they sounded really creepy. A few people shared their personal stories, and the thing that struck me the most was that most everyone who has seen these shadow people reported that they were wearing some kind of hat. From top hat to Zorro-style hats, and even full hoods. There was one other person in the room who said he'd seen a fedora-type hat-wearing man at the foot of his bed when he was young as well. This was all before I had said a single word about my experience. I had a short conversation with him after the panel and told him I'd had the exact same thing happen to me. He asked me if anything bad had happened to me after I saw him, because the shadow people were supposed to be bad omens. I told him not that I could remember. He then told me his parents had separated after he saw the Hat Man in his room. We ended up going our separate ways, but I kept thinking about what he said. Later that night, it hit me. The reason my mother, sisters, and I moved out of the house I saw Hat Man in was because my father was an abusive alcoholic, and my mother took us and left soon after I'd seen him. They got a divorce shortly after. Since then, I've done tons of research on shadow people and Hat Man, who has been seen by thousands of other people in similar situations to mine. But there's no conclusive evidence as to who they are, why they're here, and whether or not they're malevolent. Maybe they come here from their dimension to warn us, and maybe Fedora Guy's specialty is watching over broken homes. Maybe they're demons, and are the cause for the bad omens they have become a unanimous sign of. Or they could be aliens, watching the human race and manifesting as humanoids with hats on so they don't seem so strange to us. Maybe they watch us all every single night, and only a few people open their eyes in time to see them. I've never seen him, nor any other shadow person since that night. Maybe that's a good thing. I guess we'll never know.